Without further ado, we're going to be talking about fit for purpose, audio for modern meeting spaces. Now, what that means is meeting spaces have obviously changed quite a lot. They've diversified, and we're going to be looking at how technology needs to keep pace with changing meeting spaces in today's hybrid landscape. I'm not going to be the one talking most of the time. We're going to be hearing from our panelists, and I will let them introduce themselves. Heather, if you could introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Hi, I'm Heather Lee, Country Manager of Singapore and Executive Director of Southeast Asia for Vega Global. We're one of the largest system design and integrator in Asia.
Simon, if you could introduce yourself.
Certainly. I'm Simon Long, Director of Technology Strategy and Transformation for CBRE Southeast Asia, looking after the technology strategy, which includes the workplace design, as well as smart office and smart workplace elements.
And last but not least, Wei Xiang, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wei Xiang. I'm the Technical Application Engineer in Sennheiser, responsible for Southeast Asia.
Excellent. Let's jump right into it. So in the really quick intro that I did, I talked about the diversity of meeting spaces that we are seeing there. Now, obviously, right, that's not a ridiculous claim to make, but I would like a little bit of affirmation from our panelists. So Heather, is it true that meeting rooms are becoming and meeting spaces are becoming a bit more diverse? Because we're seeing everything from like phone booths, huddle rooms, little meeting rooms, bigger meeting rooms, and even boardrooms now.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to your point, where did we come from and where are we now? A lot of meeting spaces, as our client have start to test that workplace. And I mean, I think we can all agree in the last couple of years, it has been a great remote working experiment for all of us. So smart speakers and smartphone have become a staple in workplace across the globe. And I think this has been fueled by the audiovisual innovations in some of the high definition videos, conferencing technology, crystal clear sound system, collaborative working software, like Microsoft Teams, Zoom. And I think we noticed that what we have noticed is that participant can now experience a far greater benefit of in-person communications. And even if they are 1,000 miles away apart, right? And utilizing this technology, I think we're seeing that organizations have forged a stronger professional relationship, regardless of their physical or virtual space. And I think if we fast forward to now, to your question is, a lot of the audiovisual technology are vital in a hybrid world where the digital and the physical are becoming much more similar, blended. And so for instance, our clients are engaging with their colleagues during a video conferencing sessions. If they're struggling with poor visual signal, the line of communication is broken. And so the spaces where they're in and where they're virtual or physical, if we don't have that issue resolved, and over time they could lose, that user and employee engagement. And so the evolutions of audiovisual in catering different spaces is becoming extremely vital for the internal and external engagement with each other and content sharing to optimize that communications.
Simon, sticking on the topic of the diversification of meeting spaces and areas, is it just putting VC in whatever space you can get your hands on, or is there more to it? Are we now at a stage where we're actually defining these new spaces and we kind of know how they fit into the whole footprint of a corporate real estate facility?
I definitely think it's both. We've seen a rising demand for video conferencing spaces now. Big part of that is where you've had those traditional sort of 1-2 person focus rooms where we expected somebody to just drop in and have a mobile phone call and maybe work for a little bit. There's been a rising demand to VC enable those spaces now. And in addition to that, what we see now is a sort of a challenging environment to put new types of collaboration rooms. I mean, we're all on a webinar right now, and we don't have webinar rooms. A small, really good high quality camera, really good acoustics in that room, good lighting, good microphone to do a webinar like this, or record a video perhaps for presentation later on, that again might be a smaller 1-2 person room that you would have permanently set up to do that. That's a very new space, but we have an increasing demand for it all the time. And I don't think it's certainly just putting new tech into these spaces. As I mentioned before, you might need specific acoustics or a slightly different room layout to do something like that more comfortably. So I think it's really shaping the world of hybrid work is really shaping new office layouts with new meeting rooms. And as Heather mentioned, that's brought this rise in more technologies and different technologies to fit into those spaces.
Wei Xiang, from your perspective, how are you conceptualizing this diversification of meeting spaces? The fact that, you know, as Simon just put it, VC is now being put into a lot more rooms and areas where previously maybe end users were not considering it.
I think the diversity, I mean, the evolution of the diversity of spaces has actually started even before the COVID pandemic. So back then we are seeing organizations creating more and more conducive spaces, modern spaces, to support their workers to be more productive and efficient in their work. So part of the design evolution also included the reduction of user interaction with AV systems, such as minimizing physical handling and operating of AV equipment. And so with this, automation of AV system was also introduced into both large and small spaces. And this greatly reduced the user's time spent in setting up and operating AV systems. Right? And of course, the visual appearances of AV equipment were also designed to be less obtrusive, aesthetically appealing, and sometimes even blending into the environment and the interior design of the spaces. So on deployment aspect, we also see that AV equipment were designed to be easier to install, configure, and cut down on installers' time and efforts spent in deployment. And with this, the scalability of systems has also become so much easier. With COVID-19 coming into the picture, I think it acts like a catalyst to speed up this evolution that we are seeing today, right? And also, some of this thing that we have seen today is preventive measures to reduce the spread of the virus, making touchless operation of systems a critical criteria for many organizations. So equipment that used to require physical handling, like microphones, so on and so forth, are now designed to be touchless as much as possible. Right, so with what we have just brought up, I think for Sennheiser, what we have done really before the pandemic has happened, we had our Team Connect Ceiling 2 microphone, which was designed for large spaces that answered the call to all this evolution of spaces. And even in today, it is still meeting the needs of the evolving diversity of spaces. And of course, we do have different products to scale for different sizes of rooms, be it large or small. And most recently, we have also announced our TCCM, the medium size, which delivers all the innovations and features of our flagship TCC2 to a smaller and medium space. And also, we talk about the increase in the use of video conferencing. The pandemic posed a great challenge with the demand to stay connected and to have solutions that are fit for purpose. And many manufacturers actually ran into supply chain issues and could not deliver. So this also led to some manufacturers to innovate and develop new products and technology in order to meet and to deliver and meet the demands. So in Sennheiser, we were fortunate that we have our own manufacturing plants and hence have managed to navigate this supply chain crisis significantly well and provided our customer with reasonable shipping timeframe.
Simon, I kind of want to link what Wei Seong just presented with a comment that you made about, hey, all the products that existed before this diversity of meeting spaces aren't necessarily useless. But then again, there is this diversity of new spaces, right? And we are talking about fit for purpose, right? We're not talking about fitting square pegs in round holes. So how do you kind of like conceptualize that? How do you go like, all right, no, this product can be repurposed, but no, this application requires a new solution?
Yeah, one of the things we always say to all our clients is, well, take a step back, take a step back. Let's step back from the products. Let's step back from the solutions. Let's dial it back to what you are looking to achieve. Let's dial it back to, first and foremost, what is important to the end user, which is the experience. So when you think about the space that you're doing, what is the experience that you want to get out of that space? So let's do that. And then from once you've started to define the experience, right, the experience needs to be very easy to use. It needs to be, let's take, there's a question in the chat I just saw pop up, which is pods and phone booths. So let's work through that as an example. So if you were looking at a pod, like we said, maybe a webinar pod, a one-person pod, let's look at what somebody needs to be able to go into there and needs to be easy to use for them. Really simple, easy to use. So if we have the need for good lighting, when we connect in, we either want that light to turn on or there already to be significant lighting in there. We need to think about they're going to have a display screen. So the screen, is that going to affect the lighting? Again, we're thinking about that experience. Really simple, easy to use. We don't want them to have to change around a camera. So maybe you want an auto framing camera. And you start working through those experience elements from simple into functional to build out a functional spec. And then from there, what we would suggest is on top of that, right, okay, you've got a functional spec. And when we look at this, bear one thing in mind. You're probably going to be putting a lot of these out. And one thing that, again, trips people up is when you don't think about the management and the operation of those systems. So what we find is when people are rushing out to go and put solutions in like one-person pods, they might go and put an all-in-one camera, microphone, speaker bar. Great solution, very simple, very easy to use. But if it's not capable of being managed through a central portal or an administration tool, you've got a lot of those that you're going to need to go around one by one to do firmware updates, troubleshooting, find out if it's down. It's going to really lengthen the admin and fault finding process. So you layer on some of the back-end administration stuff, and then you'll end up with a functional spec with some requirements that you can go out and then cherry pick from the market the best solutions that fit those requirements, and you're guaranteeing the experience that you get at the end of it. So if you were looking at that pod, you'd add in what we said: good lighting, good screen, make sure everything's automated, simple, potentially just one USB-C cable for connectivity, something that can support Teams, Zoom, WebEx, whatever you're using. Make sure it's easy to use, make sure it's manageable, and then you've got a central management and administration platform for it. So that's how you would reverse engineer it and go out to the market and pick your Sennheiser speaker and whichever camera you wanted to use, etc.
Heather, same question over to you. Are you feeling like, hey, I have all the tools I need to meet these user requirements that Simon kind of like put forward? Do you feel that like when customers are going like, this is the outcome that I want, you feel like, yeah, okay, I've got everything I need from my technology partners to kind of build what these people are asking for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I want to pick up on the point that Simon has said earlier. It's almost like, whoa, take a moment. Let's just find out understanding your brief. And I think, again, and I think the point around here is really redefining the hybrid working and is in kind of an ongoing agenda, isn't it? To be honest, there's no one size fit all. And I think that's what I'm agreeing with what Simon is saying. Well, let's understand what your requirement is and what your brief is. And I think AV technology needs to be flexible and adaptable. And what Vega is doing is really trying to engage our clients and working with consultants like CBRE right at the start of each conversation to understand the design and really come up with the workable solutions ideas. As our clients start to push us into looking beyond audio-visual. And so the upfront planning and allows for contingency, to understand, how to make meeting rooms more flexible when they start to, and their workplaces start to continue to evolve. And, manufacturers have also helped a lot too. I think when we're designing solutions for our client, introducing technologies that support different workspaces, like Sennheiser, coming up with the Teams Connect ceiling medium, allowing for medium to small meeting rooms. So our engagement with many of our manufacturers also allow us to make some pre-ordering and also understanding what the requirement is, and therefore we can help to do some pre-orders to help shorten that installation timeframe. And the other point that I wanted to, and I also agree with what Simon is saying, is about the operational support. And so once you implement the technology, it's about, well, how do the user going to continue using it? So the user training and the operation support is extremely important to continue that conversation, to continue that enablement.
Wei Xiang, I just want to get your thoughts and tie this conversation up. I personally think that the TCCM, which you talked about, is like one of those products that's like the first wave of products that have been designed, taking into consideration all the evolution that has happened because of the pandemic and all the disruption. Could you shed some light on what kind of user experiences you were looking to enable with the TCCM? What was some of the thought process when this product was being designed by Sennheiser?
Right. So this TCCM was actually developed based on the success of the predecessor, the TCC2. And of course, one of the key feature definitely is being touchless. The microphone is able to pick up the loudest speaker within the room, and it provides very natural, clear sound that Sennheiser is always very proud and confident in delivering. Right. And of course, with this technology of our dynamic beam tracking microphone, we are able to integrate with other manufacturers as well and collaborate and deploy more features that users are actually looking out for. For example, camera tracking, especially in very large deployments where we have multiple ceiling microphones, multiple cameras. So with this beam tracking, we are able to record presets from pan-tilt-zoom cameras, or even doing voice sleep systems in the large room deployments. So these are some of the trends that many end users are actually looking out for with the diversity of spaces that we are seeing right now. And yeah, so being able to bring the benefits and features of our TCC2 into a smaller spaces, it allows the market to have another option for deploying into a smaller spaces.
Yeah, most definitely, that's very sorely needed. The user has been brought up, so I would be remiss to not go down that rabbit hole. Simon, they're very good at telling you what they like, right? They like ease of use, they want it to be intuitive, they want it to be seamless. And then when you start delving into what these words mean to them and to quantify them and qualify them, that's where it starts becoming a bit murky. How do you deliver what users are asking for, taking into account that every user is different and seamless might mean something to one person and something to another person, so on and so forth?
So I think Steve Jobs had said it best when he said focus groups are all well and good, but sometimes users need to be told what they want. There's a big part of that. Yes, you can go down a big rabbit warren of users wanting everything, to have control, control my own light, control the tone of light, and other people just want a simple, I plug it in and it just works. What we try and do, and when we work very early with a client, and what I would say to everybody is, if you're thinking about it, think now, think earlier than you think it is. The time is now, not later. Start as you are talking about how people want to work and what people want to do, and you're thinking about anything that's an office replanning. What we try and do is, when we work alongside a workplace team or even an interior design team, we sit in those meetings, myself and the team, and we listen with a different set of ears. And when they're talking about what their work challenges are, without a technology question, we're able to hear, oh, it's challenging. I find some things I find slow, or I don't really use it. And we might ask, well, why don't you use it? I've never been told, or I find it too difficult. And without asking questions that are tech related, we start to get a feel for what the challenges are and why the experience might not be what it should. So we fill in some of the blanks from there. And I would say that's about half of the picture, because the other half of the picture are things that a lot of organizations and even the IT teams, the internal teams don't know about. Wei Sheng mentioned about beamforming there, right? And an IT guy is going to be like, beam what? Right? They don't know necessarily about some of those technologies that are really important now. When we consider you want a collaboration space now, and you're going to have hybrid working. So you're going to have 4 people in a collaboration zone working potentially with a 5th person who's at home. Well, that home user need is going to be completely different to the people in the office. And if you've got 4 people moving around, because collaboration when you're in a group isn't static, you'll move around, you'll go from left to right, you'll go up to the whiteboard. Tracking audio in that environment is very challenging. You need specialist equipment. You need to think about that in advance. Now, no amount of user feedback is going to go and say that to you, but when you have the industry knowledge and the awareness, you know that that is going to be a challenge for that kind of space. So that the other half of it is overlaying what the art of the possible is. The newer side of things, and saying, right, well, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can track the audio within an open space so you can move around. We can look at giving people devices. You can actually join a Zoom call now from your iPad to be able to whiteboard collaboratively. Things about that, and think about the process. But the big challenge, I would say, reflecting that bring is sometimes it's the absence of technology that we need to consider for some workplaces. I know we all like to talk about it, but if you make a corporate decision that you are trying to drive office-based collaboration, you might not want to give so many of those features to encourage people to come back together. And that's a big part of it as well, because one of the challenges of giving so much remote technology to people who work from home is then supporting it, as we mentioned before, the operational side of then it's not just in your office, it's everywhere else. And it could even be in a Starbucks or a co-working space. That technology that if you're going to give it to them is then going to go walking around. How do you completely adjust an operation and support model to fit that? So again, consider that when we are looking at these wider solutions.
Heather, how do you balance this kind of minefield of, hey, I know this is what you want, but then I also have a set of expertise and knowledge, and maybe you should listen to me instead? How do you kind of do that little dance?
Thanks. Be very difficult to ask them to just listen to us. But yeah, so I wanted just to revisit, as we discussed earlier, right? And our clients, is continuing to redefine their workplace strategies. Is it downsizing or expansion? So, as AV professionals, we need to be ready for change. So I think, quick response time, manage the expectations, in equipment delivery time is essential to support the capital investment is probably an obvious one. I think most importantly, there are just so many technologies a la carte choices out there. So, it really is our job to help the IT, AV facilities managers to navigate the different type tech fit for purpose, no pun intended, is extremely vital. Often some of the elements and the challenges that comes up from an IT manager perspective is probably addressing the IT security issue challenge, while facility managers, they want to address the operational element. So their challenges is probably somewhat different, but actually, what we're seeing is very much similar. It's about user education, and I think they just want to know the unknowns, right? So it's really to better support their jobs.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to kind of like say that they want to know the unknowns without actually going through the testing phase. Sometimes they just want the answer really quick. Wei Seong, I want to bring this conversation over to communication, right? Because obviously that's a very, very integral part of VC, right? We all know that VC doesn't work without audio. And speaking is such a natural, organic thing that everyone does in their own unique way, right? And once you start putting limitations on that, you kind of lose, that's where, you lose ease of use. That's where you lose intuitiveness. That's where you start, becoming a bit more formal, maybe a bit more rigid. You start feeling a bit more uncomfortable because it's not your natural pattern of speaking. What is Sennheiser doing to kind of like make sure that this really nice user experience of, talking openly, communicating openly, collaborating is kind of like baked into the spaces with Sennheiser solutions?
Okay, so thinking about being able to behave in a natural and organic way, I think equipment being deployed into these meeting spaces has to be, firstly, of course, touchless. It doesn't require a physical interaction between the user and the equipment, right? And I would think sometimes if the users don't see this equipment being there, they will feel less stressed and be able to behave in a more natural way. And with that, they probably can perform better in their work, in the things that they need to deliver across the communication path. So for Sennheiser, that's what our Team Connect series solutions are really doing. Our products are designed in a very sleek manner. It can be mounted in a different ways, be it surface, suspended, or flush mounted. So it really blends in with the interior design, and that makes it less obvious, obtrusive to the users in the room. And yet the users do not need to think about the equipment, and they can have the confidence to know that their voices are being picked up. Good sound quality is being transmitted across the video conferencing channels, and they are confident that people on the far end are able to hear them very clearly and naturally. And of course, so with Sennheiser, we always want to emphasize on our sound quality. We want to give our users the same confidence that we have in our sound, and that they do not need to think about the equipment at all, and to know that this equipment and these systems are there to support their needs to communicate for their business or educational needs.
Yeah, I like your line about unobtrusive, right? Like one of the easiest ways to put someone at ease would be to just like, hey, I'm not pointing a microphone in your face. It's in the room. You'll be heard. Don't worry about it. The IT manager, right, has been brought up multiple times. So I'd like to start focusing the remaining time talking about IT, facilities manager, remote management, operations, that entire package. Wei Seong, if you could start us off by kind of like telling us a bit more about what Sennheiser is doing to ensure that when its products are deployed, there is the possibility to manage, monitor, and operate them in a way that helps end users.
I think this point brings us back to something that Simon has mentioned in the very early part of the webinar about having a platform that is able to manage the different equipment within the system in a centralized manner. So for Sennheiser, in our business communication products, we have our Sennheiser Control Cockpit software that can be installed in any Mac or Windows PC. And it allows users to remotely manage, configure, and maintain our Sennheiser range of products anywhere within the network. So, yeah, so this allows, our design has also been made to be not so technical, which allows IT or even facilities managers to pick up the software easily, to learn how to use them easily, and reduce the learning curve so that they can actually adopt the system very quickly. Yeah, so while talking about this software, I think we also have in place network security and policies, such as some of the industry standards like the IEEE 802.1x as well as TLS 1.2. All these encryption protocols are there to give assurance to the IT managers that it is actually impossible to hack into their system through any of our audio products endpoints, right? And of course, the most important thing I find is the ability to remotely and easily manage all the products within the network. And yeah, so
yeah, the interesting thing, Heather, that Wei Xiang brought up was end users want this remote management, they want this monitoring capabilities, but then they're also very, very particular about security. And that kind of like throws a spanner in the works every now and then. What are the conversations like when you're having them with end users and IT facility managers and trying to tell them, hey, we can give you this remote management and monitoring, and then they have their security objections and you need to answer them?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. There's actually no easy answer, particularly with big MNCs, multinationals. They have their stringent security policies and governance. So really, it's just about working with their IT teams to understand what they are, what sort of framework we can work from within. And if there's an opportunity, we can help to perhaps build an isolated infrastructure to support some of that. But again, it has to be the whole ecosystem work together with consultants like CBRE, and then working with manufacturers to give the clients that comfort that whatever the solutions that we're providing, it takes a lot of that boxes. So yeah, sorry, there's no simple answers.
Simon, let me reframe this question for you. Do you think it's just a matter of having enough time to get the messaging across? Because like Wei Xiang was saying, he wasn't saying, hey, we're security compliant. He was citing actual certifications and industry standards that Sennheiser and AV in general is now starting to meet, right? Is there still I don't know, is there like some particular concern we're not addressing, or is it just a matter of, hey, we just need time for IT and facilities managers to just like get to that stage where they're more open about this and they're willing to kind of like try it out?
I'd love to say I think we can all sit back for a few years and it'll all just come together, but Honestly, it won't. It won't. It's funny for a number of us that have been, in technology for a while. We had exactly the same with IP telephony. Telephony was a standalone platform that was run completely on its own wiring, its own cabling. It didn't touch anything to do with the network. And then almost overnight, it was a network thing, and we needed to run it on the network. And there was a raft of security exploits and problems that came out with that. And it took probably about 5 or 6 years to bed in eventually, just to become absolutely normal. And yes, you just do that and you put it on the network and you get there. And we then drafted the processes and the standards to make everything work with that. Now, AV over IP is nothing new. I mean, we've all been speaking recently at events where we've been sort of laughing about this. Why is it taking so long? Because we've been looking at these challenges for like 10 years now. And even I'm looking again at the chat, AV is still deployed as a separate network, not linked with corporate networks. Does this need to change? Yes. 100% yes. It does. And I think the challenge stems from, again, when we consider the way that networks are going, and this is a big challenge we have at CBRE for a lot of our clients, is because it isn't just AV that's going down this route now. Before it was just kind of telephony, but we now have AV over IP, all of the property technology. So that's the sensors that we use for facility management, energy monitors, lights now, lighting control systems, security access control systems are all IP network based. And if we keep going down this route where we build separate networks for each, it is cost prohibitive and an administration operation nightmare. But what needs to happen is that same amount of effort that goes over the duration of a long project costs you more. We need to pull it back to the start. So again, go in with an open mindset, go in and say, right, let's pull some of these disparate places together. Let's get AV, IT, FM in the room, and let's talk right at the beginning of any project about what is likely to happen. Now, that's a very different skill set. It's not possessed by any one person. It requires team. It requires collaboration. It requires people saying, I don't understand, and education amongst ourselves. And I think that's something that a lot of people still today are afraid to put their hand up and say, I don't understand that. But I think if we start to break down some of those barriers and silos, we're going to see a massive uptake and adoption of really great solutions, because it isn't just about getting it all on one network, but as soon as you do, the doors of possibility just fly open. Because when you've got that on the network, if you think about that, we've got the lights on the network. As soon as the AV system turns on, the light's set to the right value. Hey, that's good, right? As soon as people start coming in and out, once it's on the network, we can get things to integrate and talk to each other, which really drives up that experience and ease of operation. We can see the stats of everything. If the lights aren't working in that room, then it's no good. Even though the AV system's up, it's not going to be good. So we start to get proactive and preventative maintenance. So there are a lot of really good opportunities by bringing everything onto the network, but we do need to just think about it in advance and sit down and bring some different teams together and talk about it more openly and honestly at the beginning. And then hopefully it'll just be another thing that we all just, the network turns on, we just do that and it just works.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Right? Like, wouldn't that be nice? Heather, let's move from security to remote management and monitoring, right? We know that sometimes you could just have like multiple window panes, right? Like it just becomes a thing of like, to manage this, I need to go here, to manage that, I need to go there, like this URL, that URL, and then you're just stuck with a bunch of things to do, and it just becomes so complicated that you don't really want to engage with it. Well, is that accurate with how, you're finding remote management and monitoring being deployed on projects that Vega is working on? Or do you feel that, no, we've gotten to a point where it's really streamlined and it is offering value to IT facility managers?
I think in the last couple of years, remote management is obviously became a more prominent kind of roles and responsibility of everyone. the conversation had slipped since we've now everything's open up, and again we're looking at people returning to the office. So we're actually now starting to see clients and some of the facilities managers and IT support team is wanting that support back in-house. So it's not something that is going to go away. There will be that remote support, and applications are now becoming a lot more intuitive. Microsoft Teams are rolling out, integrating all their platforms. Obviously there's one big talk that is out there, ChatGPT. Could be something that could be the new immersive technology coming in to support that remote, ad hoc kind of support. But obviously there's a lot of sanity check that's happened in the background that's require human interactions. So yes, to your question is remote support required? Absolutely yes. Do we need to have more in-house support? The answer is also yes, as we see people returning to the office and asking for that a quick response time.
Last question on this before we go to Q&A with our live audience. Wei Xiang, the Sennheiser platform can obviously account for all Sennheiser devices. That in itself is extremely good, and it is extremely valuable. But moving down the line, right? Are there plans to evolve this? Are there plans to kind of like make sure that this fits into maybe other larger BMS type systems that provide remote management? Or are there plans to like, hey, third parties can also kind of be popped into our platform so that you can have a little bit of a more streamlined UI when it comes to remote management and monitoring?
I think we already have existing collaborations with some of our alliance partners to have like plugin integrated into their control software. So of course, these controls are still rather standard protocols over the network. So it is actually possible to integrate with BMS systems, with third-party products to put everything together into one interface, which makes it much easier for the end users to operate and manage all the different brands of products together on one platform. Yes, so in terms of our products down the road, our control cockpit software is always being developed as we come up with more business communication products. These are also being updated and put into our control cockpit software. So likewise with older products, this is all the same network protocols that is being used. So yes, to answer your question, we are able to integrate with other products as well.
Excellent. Audience, feel free to pop your questions over. To start off, I'm going to pick the pods question, but I'm going to reframe it a little bit because I am personally very interested in this as well. And I'm going to be reframing it for all of our panelists based on their expertise. Let's start with you, Wei Xiang. I have a pod. What Sennheiser product should I put in it? Okay, we have the TC ISP, our Team Connect intelligent speaker. It's a small little speaker phone. Everything is built in with a 7 beam tracking microphone. It can fit in. Good for a single user up to 10 user room. So that scales the possibility of deploying this device into this range of room sizes. And yeah, so that's for the pods and phone booth. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Simon, I have no doubt that the tech in the pod is going to work, right? But can we stop making them feel like filing cabinets for humans? Like, can we humanize them a little bit? Because they look really bad. You don't want to be sitting in them for too long.
I am absolutely with you with that. It was very interesting to me. I felt during COVID, I made a prediction that when we had these small focus areas and quiet areas in the office, that when we all returned to the office or returned back to the world of work, we would start getting rid of them. You know, everybody that wanted to do the quiet focus work would work from home, you know, or go to their remote place or their zone for focus. And boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong about that prediction. What we've actually seen now from a lot of our clients is a rising demand for more small focus, collaboration, quiet working areas. And I think that is because we've spent 2 years, you know, working in isolation and quiet and calm. Those of us that have had that, you know, where the kids have been at school and those quiet times, that now when we come back to the hustle and the bustle of the office, people are getting distracted and they just want a quiet zone. To your point about making them more comfortable, absolutely yes. Now the challenge with that is you want it to be open, you know, and when you're an interior design firm, and we have 36 interior design firms that CBRE has called the Design Collective. They're all about, well, we'll make it open, we'll make it glass, and glass is really bad for acoustics. So there is this whole challenge around that, but I would love to see things changing around that. But what I would say is I'm not sure it's going to be, I think it's something we're to see for the short to medium term. I'm not sure about the long term in those spaces, whether they will continue to be as in demand, because again, as we come back, we'll probably get more used to the sound, the differentiations. And an interesting one about acoustics, actually, that has been one of the biggest points that's been raised, actually, isn't just the ability to pick up audio and sound, it is sound in open spaces, background music, sound suppression systems, white noise generation. There's been a big drive in that in open areas as well, just to deal with the change in, I would say, demand or expectation for how sound is handled in the workplace now.
And Heather, Vega probably has to, you know, deploy these pods, right? You need to make sure the wiring, the data, the power, and all that stuff is accounted for. And you also kind of have to account for the fact that there are some like ready to go solutions, off the shelf kind of solutions, but most of these are kind of like little bespoke spaces. Are they like really painful to get up and running, or are you guys kind of like, nah, it's fine?
Well, it really depends on the pods that the client's requirement is. There's many pods out there, right? And a lot of the furniture manufacturer has their own kind of idea of the pods. You know, one is being, you know, quite funky and being adopted mostly across is, you know, Framery. And they have their own kind of integration. So again, for us, it's about working with not just the consultancy, the consultants, the interior designers, actually working with the furniture manufacturer as well. But for us, it's not just the video. It's also, you know, the whole package. So we're talking about the screen. We're talking about the cabling. To your point is, do we need to have a little speaker to make sure that they receive the sound properly? And some client just doesn't want any technology in that pod, and all they want is a power and that they can charge their laptop, and they want to do their call just from their laptop, to be honest. So it's a bit more, you know, consideration, but different pods. It's just about working with many different manufacturers, understand, you know, what they have available and how we support the clients and their client brief, what type of technology we want to put in those pods.
A question from our chat. Wei Seong, I'd like to throw this to you first. The question is, smart TVs, right? The display panel. Can, like, eventually, do you think like sound bars and cameras and everything are just going to be included as part of the panel, making it like just a panel that you need to put up? And have the panel manufacturers been talking with Sennheiser to see if, you know, your microphones can be incorporated into their next gen smart TVs?
Okay, so far, to my knowledge, there's not been any collaboration for such a product yet. But I think for a product that has everything integrated in one package. Sounds
Yeah.
really very good for an end user, very easy to deploy. Yeah, I mean, there are actually products on the market that are somewhat like this already. Yeah, so yes.
Personally, I always feel that like when it comes to these all-in-one products, they're very good, but you can't really escape the limitations of physics at some point in time, right? Like, okay, you can have a 180-degree field of vision camera, and you can have like microphones that are really good at picking up, but then you do sometimes have to make a little bit of consideration for something like sight lines or something like where people are naturally speaking from and how that audio is going to be picked up. But that's just like my take on it. I like them, but I feel that there will always be a place for, you know, custom audio and video solutions. I have a question for Heather. This is more of a meta question. Does being in meetings mean you being productive?
Wow. So I'm not going to even attempt to answer the productivity question. I'm not an expert, so I can't. And I'm going to be very frank here. I'm not a workplace expert. I don't really know the rules on defining productivity because it's a science. However, the question is very interesting one. Can we be productive in a meeting, or is the meeting productive? I'm going to be a bit more subjective here. The question is, we don't know, because it's really sometimes with, and also with the COVID situation, sorry, I'm bringing that up again, the C word. It's almost like, well, it's so easy just to turn on Teams. You know, let's just jump on a meeting. So a lot of the times it's almost like we could be, I mean, for my own personal experience is, you know, to a point where we're jumping on meetings for the sake of just having a quick meeting. But I think a meeting definition is about, well, are we going to be able to get some action items out of it? What are the agendas? I think we may need to just revisit that a little bit. So it may not be a technology related question. It's more on a behavioral question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree, right? This is an organizational question. This is something that organizations and HR departments need to answer for themselves.
Can I just add a quick bit onto that? Because I think it's a really interesting one. We had the same question about emails, right? Did emails make work? Is it the number of emails that you have that increases productivity? And I would actually say what you need to consider is the type of meeting that it is. You know, is it a one-to-one person meeting, right? Then that's very different to having a collaboration session and a collaboration meeting. One of the things that we are looking at doing with this is using the statistics of collaboration tools to understand how people are engaging with each other in an organization. So if you go in, and anyone can do this if you are a Teams user, you can install the Power BI app, which is if you go into apps in Teams and add Power BI and it will give you your statistics of your Teams utilization. And it will say you've had like this last week, you've done 16 hours of video calls. For half of the time you've been on mute. You know, for maybe 1 hour you've been screen sharing. But what that gives you a very interesting insight, if you took a macro, macro lens at yourself and then zoomed out and looked at that at an organization, is you would be able to say, well, actually, I have a lot of people who are sat in meetings with their camera turned off on mute. Why? That's a very interesting insight. But if you were to take another organization that says, well, actually, I have a lot of people with the camera turned on in a lot of meetings that are not on mute, and there's a lot of sharing sessions, then that is very productive, I would say, because people are likely to be engaging and not just, you know, a blind, you know, just an attendee that's not engaging, potentially not there. So look at the type of meeting that it was. Is it one or is it many? And look at what was happening within that meeting. And that will give you a little bit of insight, I think, more into the productivity question.
Wei Xiang, a question for you about modular meeting spaces. The question's asking, we kind of tend to look at spaces as, okay, this is a 2-person meeting room, this is a 4-person meeting room, this is a 6-person meeting room, this is an 8-person meeting room. And then we design the tech and the solutions based on that. Could we possibly start thinking of it more as, hey, this is one space which can be used by 2 people or 4 people or 6 people or 8 people? And like personally, I think with the TCCM, you kind of have a solution that can fit this expansion or contraction of people as required.
Yeah, I think what you have just asked or described is what we typically known as a multi-purpose room. So these room types have been in existence in many organizations, and yes, you mentioned about the TCCM is suitable for it. Really need to be fitted into the right space size in order to capture audio within that recommended coverage area. So when talking about multi-purpose rooms, I think what users really want is to have the flexibility in terms of what they are doing within this room. If it's a 2-person, they could be doing some activities, collaboration, where they may need to move around. Probably maybe possibility demonstrating a product, a large product probably. And when there are more people in the room, they can have like trainings, they have meetings. So deploying a system in such a space, I think it has to have that flexibility. So for example, our TCC mic is able to do that for the audio aspect of it. And of course, we also need to look at the whole picture of integrating the entire experience, controls and videos as well. Everything must fit into the context to meet the user's requirements.
Last question for today, and I'm going to throw it over to Heather. Do you think that meeting spaces are going to continue to diversify? Because we've already seen, we're talking about pods, we're talking about flexible modular spaces. Do you think there's more changes around the corner based on conversations you're having with clients?
The answer is yes. I think, again, the hybrid working strategy is not going to go away. I think a lot of clients will continue that conversation internally to redefine what it really means for them and their organization. So we will start to see a lot more for us in the projects that we're working on. We're starting to see a lot of clients are now moving towards that diversification or different space or community space. Even landlords are having that conversations as well. So it's no longer just the client within their workspaces, but landlord is trying to look at how to redefine their space to sweat their asset. So therefore, they're attracting more tenants to use their space. So they're getting operators in to run a lot of their space to be more auditorium-like, to creating more collaboration, a more social aspect space for them to come in to spend a bit more time. And so as technologists, as system integrators, we do need to look at diversify ourselves to have solutions that is more consistent and more readily available. Obviously then the question around manufacturer is like, please make sure that you have stuff for us. So we're not waiting forever for certain things. So yeah.
And I think that is a perfect point to end our conversation for today. Panelists, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and giving us your time. Audience, thank you so much for coming in and giving us all these questions to kind of like chunk through. We will be back next time with another brand new panel and another topic to discuss. Until then, thank you so much.